Hello everybody, welcome back to the Premier Injuries channel, and today we're going through all the latest injury news on this deadline. We've got lots to discuss, lots of fun, and we'll get into some of the fun a little bit later. But first and foremost, before we start, just to remind you, you can always check out the latest injury news over at premierinjuries.com. We've got every team listed and everything that you need to know. But also before we start, we always have to introduce you, Mr. Ben, although I don't think you need any introduction. You're well popular within the FPL community. But yeah, Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Of course, the end is nigh. The game week 38 is fast approaching, and game week 39, I hasten to add. I will provide updates on that as we near, the big North versus South clash. But it's been another mad rush. We've got 12 press conferences, or had 12 press conferences scheduled from 1:30 onwards. So that's why you'll see my head jutting back and forth, looking for some latest updates. Some big news coming out of Old Trafford with regards to Marcus Rashford. So just wait to get a handle on that. But I'm sure by the time we get round to the Red Devils, I'll be fully in the know.
Yes, and just to let everybody know, tomorrow is the Mitrovic return day, and to celebrate it, I actually sent you a card, Ben, didn't I? So
Absolutely, Jason. Let's see if we can get this up on camera. It was very nice. The surprise, and we've got that. Is it? It's the camera's blurring it out for some reason.
it's too
It's not
explicit.
pornographic. Yeah, it's not an OnlyFans. Hold on, I got it. Oh, there.
Oh.
What if I take my face out of the equation?
Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
there we go. Yeah.
But obviously, it's because tomorrow's your birthday, Mr. Ben. Do you have anything planned for the big day?
Work, my friend. Nothing more than that. That's what happens when you turn 46.
Jeez.
Life and other commitments take over. So by the time I finished work, I'll not be bothered to be doing anything. Yeah, am I back?
Yes, you are back. You are back.
Nothing major planned. I will go out for a half marathon probably on Sunday morning. Do like to go for a little bit of a run in and around my birthday, get a few miles on the clock just to mark this momentous occasion. So yeah, that's it. Being good.
Burn the calories that you've eaten the day before with all the cake and everything.
You know what, man? I think it's going to be fairly low key. I'll be leaving the house 7:20. I'll probably not get back in until about 8 o'clock tomorrow night.
Jeez.
Then the wife is going out. So I'll not see her. The kids, I'll probably just dump them in bed straight away. So peace and quiet.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a bad birthday at all. Low key, enjoyable. But we're getting off the point here because obviously we have to talk about the injury news, and obviously tomorrow is Mitrovic return day, as we said. Somebody has actually asked the question. I wonder how Mitrovic will do without Pereira. It's a good question. But we're going to start off with Bournemouth. What is the latest from the Cherries?
Yeah, I'm just actually looking at the news from Gary O'Neill, his press conference. Dory will play some part in the run-in, but unfortunately he's not going to be ready for this one. The only returner, Kiefer Moore, that was a concussion that he picked up in game week 34, which kept him out of last weekend's defeat to Chelsea. So he has been back on the training pitches and he's in contention, but more likely a place on the bench.
And I think this could be quite an interesting game, maybe a lot of goals in it, because it's two teams, Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, have got nothing really to play for. As we've known earlier in the season, the manager has kind of improved things, but they weren't a great defence. They let in a lot of goals, pretty bad on set pieces as well. But in terms of it, that could be one to watch in terms of maybe some differentials as well. I'm marking Eze for that game to do well. I don't know who will win from the two, probably Crystal Palace, but I think there's going to be goals in that one. This weekend, Arsenal. Any positive news for the team?
It depends what you mean by positive. There is a sliver of hope with regards to the fitness of Zinchenko. not necessarily for this weekend, but by the running. Now, we know that The Athletic broke a story on Thursday, late Thursday. David Ornstein confirmed or posted out an article saying that William Saliba and Zinchenko had been ruled out for the season. That was a calf injury that Zinchenko picked up at St James's Park. However, Mikel Arteta wouldn't or refused to rule him out for the remainder of the campaign. So maybe a little bit of hope there. With regards to Saliba, certainly out of game week 36 and already a doubt for 37. So at best, you're thinking probably 38, but depending on what's happened with regards to that title race, then I expect that if it's all over and done with, then he won't be taking any risks in rushing him back. He'll want to keep him for pre-season to make sure he gets a good 6-week block under his belt.
And the interesting thing is you've kept Jorginho in the 11. Is it because he's impressed, or is there any other news around Thomas Partey?
Yeah, I think this certainly deserves it on performances. I mean, I'll say this through gritted teeth. It was a very professional performance at St James's Park. The writing was sort of on the wall when we hit the post early on, and then we had that VAR overturned decision on the penalty. Odegaard took his goal very well, and to be honest, Arsenal looked like they had some gears and they were cutting through us very easily. It was a surprise to see Jorginho get the nod over Thomas Partey, but based on how the team's performing and the results they're getting, I think he certainly deserves to retain his place in the side.
We got some messages. John says, hi, everybody. He also wants to know the latest on Alexander Isak. He could be his captain for the game week. Cedric says, greetings and salutations. And he also says, happy Mitrovic Day. I mean, we've all been building up to that. It's been, a while, probably the last month. We've been looking forward to Mitrovic Day. Russell Skidmore says, promoted Budapest Blades here. Great to see you back, Russell. And then we've got a question. We'll answer this a little bit later because obviously we go through the teams alphabetically. KDB to Salah or Bruno. Mary says hi. Let's continue on the team news. Aston Villa up next. I like them for this game against Tottenham. I really do. I think this could be a fun one. Again, they're at home. But is there any injury news that should potentially derail the Villains?
Certainly not derail them. For the first time in what would be a very, very long time, the Villains have more or less a clean bill of health. If you discard Jed Steer, who picked up that ruptured Achilles while on loan, I think it was at Luton well over 12 months ago. So everybody else, is fit and available, although by Unai Emery's own admission. That's because I just feel his fitness is slightly ahead of maybe where Boubacar Kamara would be. Of course, he's been managing that ongoing ankle ligament problem, returned, had a little bit of a reaction, and then had to sit some more time out on the pitches. Last week, we seen Bertrand Traore come into that starting 11, but he was replaced early on. That didn't really work for them in that West Midlands derby. But the likes of Philip Coutinho and Leon Bailey, Matty Cash, all of those players are going to be in a better place following another full week of training on the bench. So they're not going to be far away, certainly from minutes or potentially, pushing for a start. But none of those, I would think realistically could push for 90 minutes.
So John says, Bailey differential, is he ready or not? You're saying probably not risking it on this one.
Yeah, just given the fact that it was a hamstring injury, the re-injuries, recurrence, yada, yada, yada. Difficult to throw him in there. I see probably Bailey making more of an impact from the bench. And not only that, yes, they got beat last week, but you contextualise. Villa have been very good. Unai Emery's just won. Did he get manager of the month for April as well? So, yeah, like I say, there's been some good performances in there. Disappointing last week, but I still think Unai Emery sticks with the majority of those players who've got him to this, got him to where they are in the league at this point of the season.
And also, Tottenham are just pretty bad at the moment. I don't think Unai will want to change too much. He won't need to change too much because the team that they're playing against just won't offer too many problems. Andreas Ayur says, love your work, you are legends. Thank you very much, Andreas. Good luck to you this weekend, and of course you can send in any questions. Jondra says, thanks Ben, yada yada yada. High quality analysis there as always. Along with our pronunciations, you know, they're on point. Brentford are up next. What is the latest for the Bees?
Yeah, not much change in the treatment room. One of those press conferences we haven't actually heard from Thomas Frank as it currently stands, but again, nothing sort of overtly obvious from the Bees. In terms of those long-term absentees, maybe Christoph Ayer is one that is pushing close to be involved at some point. He has been sidelined, ongoing calf problems, return, just a little bit of shorter match fitness last time out. So he's knocking on the doors with regards to the rest of those players. We're not expected to see anybody that's currently in the treatment room back for the Bees. Maybe the goalkeeper Straskosha, but he's had ongoing calf problems for a long time, and those return dates have been put back on several occasions.
Sindri Steinerson has said, Tony goal this week. If you look at his games, 1 goal every 2 games. It'll be interesting, this one. I haven't really backed Tony this week against West Ham. But obviously there's like a lot of differing things going on. Brentford, I don't know if they've entered into that area of nothing to play for, or if they're on the edge of that. But West Ham, obviously, they played yesterday. They could be a bit tired. There might be a bit of rotation because they have a really good chance of getting through to that cup final. So maybe anything could happen. We're going to go to the next team, which Brighton, who obviously play Arsenal this weekend. But we do have a couple of messages here. And I do have to say, I did ask Ben to bring the shoes on for this show. So I guess we're going to have to wait another week. Mary says, shoe reveals, or are they Crocs?
Do you know what? I've actually ordered another pair now as well. So maybe we'll do the shoe reveal and another shoe reveal. In fact, the second pair are potentially due at some point today, but Jeez. I haven't had the text message to say that it would be anytime within the next hour or so, unfortunately. But I promise I work between split sites, and the trainers are, of course, at the other venue.
Yes, which is unfortunate. When you messaged me, I was like, damn. But, you know, these things happen. But I guess it's almost as like an apology / you know, making it up for making people wait. If you have a double shoe reveal, I think people will like that.
We'll have a DSW.
Oh, what's that?
Double shoe week.
Oh, double. That's great banter from you.
Double SW37. Double shoe week 37. Lock that in.
37. Happy weekend, guys, from Kesh. I'm shifting my home tomorrow, so need to do transfers today. Any confirmation on Alexander Isak starting? We're going to get to that in just a little bit. We're going to get to Newcastle. First of all, we're going to focus on the Seagulls of Brighton. Bit of a change up with the team here. What's the thinking, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, certainly need to be a little bit freshened up. Roberto De Zerbi has spoken about a little bit of fatigue, the schedule finally catching up with the squad, and not just physically, but also that mental fatigue, you know, psychologically, you know, having to raise the game week in and week out. It's all well and good. You know, you being, you know, the levels of expectations have risen significantly from Brighton, who have just been a good footballing, entertaining team, to now that potentially was on the cusp of maybe pushing for those European qualifying spots. You know, they were pushing for the FA Cup final, and that takes its toll, and that was a heavy weight to burden, you know, for the manager and the players. And like I say, maybe all of that just came to fruition on Monday with that heavy defeat. And also, you know, they're picking up a couple of key injuries to some big players within the squad, none more so than Solly Marsh. So there's a little bit of injury, and there's also just a little bit of freshening up of the side, why we've went with that. We have just heard from De Zerbi. Adam Webster's one of those who won't be available, but Levi Colwell was already in that team as well. I also went with Bonetti on that right-hand side. That could be changed around a little bit. It depends really on the fitness of Veltman. where Pascal Gross would play. Veltman obviously could come in on the right with Gross going in higher up the field. With regards to Solly Marsh, questionable if he'll return this season. De Zerbi said he hopes to have him back for maybe the last 2 games. But what I've been asked this question a lot. I looked at that mechanism of injury. Typically, it's the most common of those hamstring injuries. When you're running that sprinting mechanism, that's a fairly good indication that there's maybe a tear or a strain in that bicep femoris. And typically, you're looking at a minimum of around about 2 to 3 weeks with regards to that. And that certainly fits with what we're hearing from the Seagulls boss. So question marks over Solly Marsh for the run-in.
We've got Jack and Coke. He says, happy birthday, Ben, for tomorrow. Not looking a day over 44. So
well, that's good. That gives us 2 years.
It gives you 2 years, indeed. You've just answered the Solly March question. So John Dre says, is it worth moving March to McAllister, or are there better moves to make? It's a difficult one, isn't it? I put Joe Willock in my team for this week. You wrote about him in your 888 article. I think he's a great differential. Double game week, fairly attacking, good underlying numbers. He's played well. If I was going to get a double game week player in, I'm not looking really at Brighton. Arsenal and Newcastle, coupled with what you've already described there, a bit fatigue, the fixtures pile up. It's a bit difficult, and also there is the reality of maybe some that he doesn't play both games all the way through. So I don't know. What would you choose, Willock over McAllister for this game week, Ben?
If you had asked me this question before Brighton's last double game week, which was a 34, I would have went McAllister all of the way. We've seen very little rotation and changes from Roberto De Zerbi, and certainly the Mitomas and the McAllisters of this world almost certain to be locked in for both of those games. But then, he threw a cat amongst the pigeons. Those 2 players were dropped out for one of those games, including Caicedo. They went out and they beat Wolves 6-0. And, I think that just gave him a little bit of confidence in the fact that, look, he can bring in these players who are on the fringes of that starting 11 and comfortably, interchange them. So that's the worry, and that's a concern. If I own those Brighton players, then I'm sticking with them. I'll probably take the gamble. But if I didn't, would I be looking to bring them in on a free transfer? Probably not. And I certainly wouldn't be looking to take a hit on any of those. And agree with you with regards to Joe Willock. He's probably one of those players, or one of those players who are attacking, where you'd say he's more or less, guaranteed to start the 2 games, particularly in the absence of Sean Longstaff. That shuffles things around a little bit. So I feel a little bit happier with that. Once Longstaff gets back, then maybe there are other questions to be asked. But for now, yeah, look, I like Willock, and look, we need to bounce back. So we still have that drive and that motivation to go out to do well. And Eddie Howe will want to name a strong starting 11 and to try and carry this team over the line for a Champions League place.
We'll discuss it a little bit more with Joe Willock as well when we get to the Newcastle news. Jaron Lee says, do you think Ferguson plays both games in either 36 or 37?
Oh, that's a big call, because Evan Ferguson is obviously coming back off an ankle injury as well. So in terms of that sharpness and that fitness, he isn't going to be 100%. And we know one of the biggest risk factors in terms of picking up muscle injuries is fatigue. And then also, you've had Danny Welbeck, who has been in decent nick as well, got himself a couple of goals. So I suspect that Evan Ferguson, could be rotated in and around both of those games. And certainly, even if he was to start, then, maybe minutes managed around that 55 to 65 minute mark.
We have a question from Slavcho. Well, first of all, he said, hey, we're 1 day away from the biggest day of the year. So more discussions about the Mitrovic return. Obviously, he says, my sons and wife are born in May as well, so puts you in good company there, Ben. Mary says, Buonanotte, punt it is. But also, Slavchar, I think your question, he wants to know about getting tickets for an Arsenal game in October. Probably better to DM us on that one rather than talk on stream, because we'll try and give you a little bit of help. You can DM me on Twitter or Ben, and we will try and help you out with that. Chelsea up next, predicted lineup. As always, I say this one must be really hard because there's so many players in the team. Why have you settled for this team? Is it down to injuries, tactics? I mean, what are you thinking with the Blues?
Yeah, of course, the Blues managed their first win under interim boss Frank Lampard last time out. Credit where it's due. Yes, they had to go to the Vitality, but, Bournemouth have been in decent nick. They've secured their top flight status. So, look, we'll give them that one. So changes kept to a relative minimum. Injuries, of course, have put a little bit of a spanner in the works. We've seen Ben Chilwell limp off with a hamstring injury, touch and go whether he'll return this season. Possibly outside chance for game week 37. So that's a disappointment. And the concern here is who to put on the left-hand side, with also Marc Cucurella out. I have went with Azpilicueta, but Lewis Hall is another possibility. And again, we have heard Frank Lampard reference the youngster in part of his press conference. Elsewhere, Wesley Fofana, he missed out as a precaution last weekend, complained of a hamstring issue on the way down to the Vitality, but he's trained well this week, no problems there. So that injury to Chilwell means it's just forced a little bit of a formational tweak, and I'm not 100% settled on this one. So yeah, keep your eyes and ears peeled, because there may be one or two updates in this team, but hopefully from past that sort of halfway line and upwards, those five will remain.
And the situation at Chelsea as well, like you said there, Chilwell's out, Reece James is out. They've already not played well this season. They're potentially, I guess they're on the cusp of not much to play for. I think it'll be interesting, the final few games. They've got Nottingham Forest this weekend. Maybe Nottingham Forest might come in with a so-called shock, and then obviously Man City and Newcastle to finish their season. They could be conceding quite a few goals again just because of all the problems that they have in there. Crystal Palace up next, as I said there. I like the looks of Eze against Bournemouth. But what is the other team news?
Yeah, defeat last week, but overall, Roy Hodgson was pretty happy with the performance. Of course, the Eagles have done very well under the veteran boss in his second stint at the club. One question mark here, again, over Jeffrey Sloop. That's going to be a late call. I understand it isn't injury related. So it'll be, off the field influences impacting potentially his availability. So we'll wait and make a call on that one. If we have further news, then it will be updated. But elsewhere in the team, like I say, I'm expecting the Eagles to stay pretty strong. Roy Hodgson has been questioned about this in the past, about potentially bringing in some of those maybe academy players or the under 21s, or certainly rotating more with those players on the fringes. And he spoke about let's get the job done, let's get all the points on the board, and we'll worry about that further down the line. So it doesn't look as if he's easing back anytime soon.
So we've got a question from Cedric, just switching it back to Chelsea. Is the rumour true? Todd Bowley outsourced Chelsea's medical department and had to re-employ the original medical team. Any info on that one, Ben?
I mean, originally did, yeah, that was outsourced, the medical department. With regards to having to recruit former employees in terms of restaffing that medical department, that's something that I'm not aware of. I certainly haven't followed up, so that may be true, it may not. What I would say in the past, just given since he came in and that shake-up of all of the backroom staff, I was very surprised, given the fact that Chelsea inherently, are always one of those teams that, the expectation is they've got an extremely well experienced backroom staff, managed the players really well. Injury burden was low, incident rates were down. So it certainly wasn't a reflection against them. So in that regard, it was, like I say, it was a little bit of a surprise. And maybe in hindsight, Bowley was probably, we'll probably look back at that and think, maybe he's always a little bit hasty. But yeah, look, the injury situation as it stands, and you always get those spikes under new managers. Of course, we've seen that with Graham Potter. There's new philosophies, new tactics, new ways of training, players maybe trying to impress. So you do see that spike, but typically, after a short period, it tends to sort of revert back to the norm. But yeah, under Potter and everything else that was going on at the time, those levels were elevated for some considerable time.
Interesting. We've got Marius asking, are you as a number 9 ahead of Zaha? I guess that's just like a little tactical thing. It's not too much to worry about. Everton up next. They shocked people with a big win. Maybe that has secured their safety. Is there going to be any oh my God, can't get my words out. Is there going to be any team changes for game week 36?
There'll definitely be one team change in this, because I've got Michael Caine and not really sure why I've done that, because it's Yerry Mina who I think will get the nod. Of course, he came into that team on Monday. The Colombian centre-back, undoubted in terms of statistically how much better the Toffees are in a points per game ratio. It's almost night and day. The difficulty has always been trying to keep him fit. Thankfully, he came through that match on Monday unscathed. So Yerry Mina will come into this starting 11. And Nathan Patterson on the right-hand side. Seamus Coleman has just undergone knee surgery. Providing everything is okay with regards to his rehab and his recovery, then he should be okay for next season. That indeed, if he's still at Everton, because he's out of contract in the summer.
Interesting. Keep an eye on that situation. Now we have got game week 36 Fulham team. It's no Mitrovic, Ben.
Yeah, look, Connors Vinicius is done really well last time out. We've seen Marco Silva, chop and change with these strikers in the absence of Mitrovic. I think we've seen Bobby Cordova-Reid, and we've seen Daniel James. He's out at the moment, the hamstring, and also Carlos Vinicius. Vinicius was the player that we all sort of, the default player that we went to. And he struggled maybe for a couple of games. He was taken out the firing line, but I certainly think last time out, he's impressed, and he has been good in his last couple of days. So, look, he is a big player, Mitrovic. And look, again, I mentioned it with Everton, that points return, that win ratio, I think it's something like 42, 43% when Mitrovic starts within that team. It drops down to around about 36%, when he isn't in that starting 11. So that's a consideration. I think Vinicius would feel a little bit unfortunate if Mitrovic was just to be thrown straight back in there. Yes, he has been training. Yes, he has been working with the squad, but there will be that lack of little bit of sharpness from Mitrovic. So, even if he was thrown back in there, then I wouldn't expect to see a player who was firing on all cylinders, straight away.
You read my mind. I was going to ask about a bit of deconditioning. Jandre has said, so it's not Mitrovic Day after all, the big build-up for nothing. I mean, there's other things to celebrate tomorrow as well. I can't really remember what, but maybe we'll remember by the end of the show. Leeds up next. There it is. The card that I got you. Leeds up next. What is the latest there?
This is a difficult team to predict.
Has he said anything this week? Is this a week where Gracia has said something or not?
Jason, if only this wasn't a live podcast and we could edit that out, because Sam Allardyce is actually
Of course, I totally forgot.
Yeah,
there's so much managerial change. I totally forgot.
That the merry-go went round and went by, and you missed it. I understand.
Yeah. What has Big Sam said then?
Do you know what? I like Big Sam. He plays the media very well. He knows the game inside out. Very clever, very astute. He kicked off even before the press conference started, and he said, Sinistera, Dallas, Cooper, Taylor Adams, they're out. Let's start the press conference. And that's how he kicked things off. With regards to his team, I think there were elements of that game against Manchester City that he did really enjoy, particularly after that first 45. When City scored twice, you're fearing the worst. But they played their way back in. They did battle. It was maybe a surprise to see Adam Forshaw included in that starting 11. Certainly under Javier Gracia, it didn't really get much of a sniff, although injuries did play a big part in that. Now, Sam Allardyce did say that he would make a couple of changes within that team. This is a game really that one, he cannot afford to lose, full stop. And ideally, he'd like to take 3 points against his former employers. So there might be a little bit more of an attacking tactical switch in there. And I was thinking maybe of possibly dropping Forshaw in a little bit deeper, sticking with the 4-2-3-1. Allardyce said that it's not the formation, it's not the tactics that are the cause of this. It's the players who are not able to deliver. If I did bring out Forshaw, then it's merely, it's McKenna or Rocker out. And then you're looking to somebody maybe like Aronson or Somerville in attack. But also you could even throw Patrick Bamford as the striker with Rodrigo dropping a little bit deeper.
We're both, people are now going to guess, are we under the influence here? Have we started your birthday celebrations early? Me with Javi Gracia, you saying Patrick Vieira plays for Leeds. So Marius said Fulham are on the beach, and I've replied my brain is on the beach with that comment about Javi Gracia. I mean, unforgivable, really. I'll be handing in my resignation notice. No, not really. Leicester up next. The Foxes. What is the latest there, Ben?
Yeah, there's a few players who could come into this lineup. A very disappointing result on Monday, 5-3 against Fulham. Too many mistakes. You may be looking to those sort of wiser heads, the Johnny Evans of this world, the Ricardo Pereira, who's had a good week on the training pitches. All of those have been training with the squad now for over a week. So you could maybe argue that they're going to, force their way into this team. Like I say, the Foxes are a team that can't really afford any or many slip-ups if they want to survive in the top flight. So again, a couple of changes potentially with this starting 11.
Yes, indeed, and it's really exciting. Obviously, at the bottom of the table, obviously for the fans of the teams who are involved, it's not very exciting. It's massive squeaky bum time, but it's really hard to predict, isn't it? I don't even want to commit to saying who I think will go down because it seems to change every week. We've got a question from Giandre. We're moving on to Liverpool. Is this the game that Salah finally runs right this season? Could be a huge one against Leicester. What do you think, Ben? What is the team news from the Reds?
Team news, it's pretty good coming from the Liverpool camp. There was hope that maybe Naby Keita or Roberto Firmino would be forcing their way into the matchday squad, but it's come a little bit too soon for them, possibly game week 37. But that doesn't really impact on that starting 11 too much. Again, maybe one or two sort of tweaks potentially. I'll be getting questions asked about, Cody Gakpo not starting in this. But again, it's a tough one. It's 4-3. And I did go with Núñez again on reflection. Maybe Gakpo gets the nod, but I really do think it's a coin toss with that. Elsewhere within the team, I think it pretty much picks itself on form. Liverpool won't, be letting anything slip. I think is it 6 consecutive they've won now. They'll want to be pushing United, the Uniteds of Newcastle and Manchester all of the way. And, if you look purely from a statistical standpoint and on current form, this could be a big one for Liverpool. But again, you contextualise it. Leicester will want to shore things up a little bit. They could maybe go with a 5 at the back and make it really difficult for Liverpool. And ultimately, it's not about the big scorelines at this stage of the season. if Jurgen Klopp was to come away with a 1-0 victory, he'll be more than happy with that.
Yeah, but the thing is that, the data shows there is higher variance in these games. We do see a lot of goals, tired legs, tired minds, bit dejected individuals. One side of the argument, yours, it could be a conservative game, 1-0. And to back up your argument, Liverpool don't do as well away from home. And then on the flip side, it's Leicester. They've not been good. Their goalkeepers are appalling. So maybe this could be a massive scoreline. One team that a lot of people are excited about but also worried about is Manchester City. Do we back them? Do we get their assets in? You've not even got Kevin De Bruyne in the side. You've changed up the team a little bit. We have questions about Phil Foden. But the reality is probably a lot of these big players' minutes will be managed anyway with the new 5 substitute rule. Haaland could come off early. That could cap his limit and a lot of those players' limits. I mean, what is your advice around the Man City team? Do you captain Haaland? Well, what's going to go on here?
I think you go into this weekend's game with your eyes open. I certainly wouldn't look to be the captain any of their players. They just carry too much risk. We know even on limited minutes, Erling Haaland is more than capable of delivering. I do have him in my starting lineup, and I think last week I was fairly comfortable and confident in the fact that Pep would start him. I put the post out on social media. This week, there's just something nagging in the back of my mind, thinking, will he be pulled out of that starting lineup? That was a tough game at the Bernabeu. Was given a bit of a some very close contact from Antonio Rudiger and David Alaba. It's a tie that is finely poised, and I don't know. I'm just thinking, look, there's so much strength and depth within that City squad. I think you can afford to take out Erling Haaland anyway, and they can still go out and get a result. So I'm not 100% certain whether he starts. Again, I'll have a little bit of a think on that one, and potentially maybe one or two other players might need tweaked. Rodri is another one. I don't think Jack Grealish starts, as much as that pains me. He's in my fantasy team, but I think he said after that game in Madrid, I think for the first time in his professional career, he said that he was actually suffering from cramp during the game, just given the intensity of the match itself. So I think he'll be one that'll be, just kept waiting in the wings and only thrown into the mix if needed by Pep.
Jandre has said, I know it's Champions League, but the fact that Arsenal beat Newcastle might let Pep be careful with the rotation. There's a lot of thoughts that go into it. It's really hard. And I think, the point is, like you said, just be careful. Don't over-invest or over-believe. And another team that I think people need to be very worried about is Manchester United. They're not scoring goals. They're not playing particularly well at the moment. And what is this latest then on Marcus Rashford? This is kind of breaking news, isn't it?
Yeah, so we had from Eric Ten Hag, this was after 2:00, so literally just as we went live, but Marcus Rashford is flagged as a major doubt. I think he referenced it, he said that Marcus is doubtful. And then when he expanded upon his accent, he said actually he's more than doubtful. There are big question marks over his availability due to a leg injury. So again, that's, given his importance and his status and his stature within the team and his, how he's performed throughout the year, particularly in the second half, they'll be doing everything to get him fully fit for the game. And what I would say is, even if he is past fit, are we going to see a Marcus Rashford that is, again, 100%? Probably not. Like I say, it's going to be a very, very late call, and that potentially does change things up considerably for United heading into this weekend. Do we see then Weghorst? Do we see Anthony Martial? Does he go rogue? Or maybe there's and we throw Sancho in there. So there's a couple of different ways that we can look at that. What I would say is I'm probably more than happy and confident with that back seven. And then that front four are the ones, you could maybe include, Bruno's going to start. So there's three other places up for grabs, and it just really depends on how Eric Ten Hag will see that, and of course if Marcus Rashford can pass a late fitness test.
We've got FPL Rubber Ducky back. He was on last week. I hope your FPL week went well, because he said he was a bit concerned. He said quack quack, and everybody waiting for the Newcastle lineup. We will get on to that. Just a bit of context as well for the Man United situation. They've scored 8 goals since game week 29. That's the second worst goal output. Only Chelsea have done worse, and a massive 6-goal underperformance on XG. They're not looking good, and so even like you said there, Ben, will Rashford be on it? Will he be playing well? But also the team doesn't seem to be able to score goals at the moment. So Newcastle up next, and you've gone with Isaac and Wilson, but obviously it's a double game week, so do you expect Wilson and Isaac to play both? I mean, just talk us through your expectations of the Magpies.
Tough call. I think the absence of Sean Longstaff makes things a little bit easier. We dropped Joe Linton a little bit deep on the right-hand side. Otherwise, you're then looking at Longstaff and you're thinking about where to possibly put Joe Linton, or maybe who else to drop. So I think that makes things a little bit easier. I have included Miguel Almiron in this team. A little bit unfortunate on Jacob Murphy. I think that's probably one where we'll see maybe the South Americans start in one game and Murphy start in the other. And Isaac and Wilson, was it the first time this season they started together against Arsenal? And yes, look, I think in flashes, they certainly, showed that they weren't played as a central pairing together. Isaac, there's a little bit more flexibility in terms of where he can play, whether that's centrally or out on that left-hand side, and he is a handful. And Callum Wilson, he's a great number 9. So I've went with the two again. We can't afford any slip-ups. We need to be winning, at least one of these games. Ideally, if we come away with 4 points from these 2 matches, I think we'll be happy. And yeah, that'll see us well on the way to a Champions League qualifying spot. But, with regards to that second game, there are so many other factors to consider that, uncontrollables, that we need to get through this 90 minutes first before being able to, decide on or certainly nail down anybody for back-to-back starts.
Just a quick answer with Isaac versus Wilson. I don't know why the document just jumped then. With a quick answer between these two, would you back Isaac just because he's more likely to get minutes?
Everybody seems to be going down the Isaac route. Do you know what? Maybe it's my little, black and white tinted glasses, and I can't look past Callum. I really can't.
The data backs you up. He's played well recently.
I mean, he's on spot kick duties. I know how determined, how motivated, and how focused he is, and how much he wants it. I have that on a personal level. I sense that when you speak to him, he's determined. I mean, I don't. I suspect most professional footballers, at elite level, are. All he wants to do is go out and score. Started the season really well. Went through that little bit of a mini drought post World Cup, but he's back in the groove now, and he looks sharp. And to me, I'm going to go Wilson all the time. He's a goal getter. He's a threat in and around that box, and I think what just tips the scales in his favour is the fact that he's on spot kick duty.
Wilson. Nottingham Forest up next. Again, like Southampton, not too much attention on them. Just quickly get through these, Benny boy.
Yeah, we talked about players at this stage of the season maybe not being 100%. Case in point, Serge Aurier went into the last game carrying a knock, forced off in and around that hour-long mark. Under normal circumstances, Steve Cooper said that the fullback probably wouldn't feature, but we've got Nico Williams, who's also sidelined for the season, and therefore I just think he will take a bit of a risk with Serge Aurier. Awomni would be the player that would be attracting my attention in FPL if I wanted to go anywhere near Notts Forest. They've got to win. They've got to get out that malaise that they've been in. So, and Awomni, he looks all right. He's done all right in those games. Again, another player who's been hampered by injury this season.
We've got a comment here from Steve. He said, Jono versus Old Man Aspie could be fun based on your Chelsea lineup. It could well be, indeed. Southampton.
Might go Lewis Hall for that, mate. The more we chat, the more I'm thinking Lewis Hall. But yeah, we'll see.
Live on air decisions. This Saints. What's up with Southampton?
Shea Adams is a late fitness doubt, so we've just heard from Ruben Selles. If he was to miss out again, I'll have to tweak this lineup. I'm going to see if I can get some more information on that with regards to his impact. But his influence in that team again can't be understated. So he is a big player, and if they do want to maintain any slim hopes of survival, then Shea Adams needs to be in that 11. So fingers crossed.
Now, what's the latest for Tottenham?
Yeah, Clement Lenge went off with a shoulder problem last weekend. I think the Ryan Mason press conference was going as we started, so haven't had full confirmation, but understand that earlier in the week, Lenge was being assessed. And it isn't as bad as first feared, so that's why we have him in this team. And people may question this as a 4-3-3. It's a 4-3-3 out of possession, and in possession, the team goes to a more preferred or recognisable 3-4-3 with Ben Davies pushing up. So it's a little bit of a 4 when they're defending try to make them a little bit more solid in there. Otherwise, like I said, no major changes from last weekend.
And we shall continue with the analysis here. Up next is West Ham. What's the latest with the Hammers? Do you expect a lot of rotation because of this European match?
That's the worry, and that's the concern. And now that they're not 100% mathematically safe, but that victory over Manchester United, they've got 1 foot in the Premier League, and it would take some kind of monumental efforts from those below them for West Ham to slip out. So that's the worry. Is David Moyes takes a little bit of a gamble and does change things up heavily. I do have Angelo Ogbonna starting in this team. There are question marks over him. He arrived at the training ground on Friday morning, didn't feel 100%. There's been a sickness bug sweeping through the Hammers camp. Again, wasn't 100% last on Thursday night, which is why Kurt Zouma returned from injury and he was thrown straight back in against ASL Alkmaar. But like I say, I probably will make 1 or 2 tweaks to this lineup.
We've got a new person on the stream, the disabled team. Welcome to this. But we're just wrapping up now, so you can watch the whole stream back. As always, we go through the teams alphabetically just to make it easier for everybody just to follow along. Last team is Wolves, and then Ben, I think you should show everybody your card one more time for obviously the return of Mitrovic, your return of Mitrovic card. And then hopefully next week we can do a double shoe reveal. But yes, what is the latest for Wolves?
Yeah, again, top flight status has been secured. So Julian Lopetegui has confirmed that he will make changes, potentially involving some of those fringe players, and also hasn't ruled out the possibility of involving those players, some from the under-21s. So that's going to be the difficulty here in, team selection from this point through until the end of the campaign. Case in point, left back, I think it was Hugo Bueno, disappeared from the matchday squad in game week 35, having started the previous 2 matches. That was purely a tactical decision. Totti come in at left back and he actually scored, so that's why we haven't retained in that place. Again, 1 or 2 tweaks that we could potentially make here. I'm expecting this Wolves team to be a complete car crash. In all honesty, I'm going to have no idea how Lopetegui will set them up. Thankfully, they don't draw too much interest from the community, so it may go underneath the radar.
You should have just done like a YOLO team with, 1 at the back, 7 up front, 3 in the midfield, just cause.
Just cause.
Yeah, well, I mean that's how they should play anyway. They've been quite boring this season. Have a bit of fun. They've done everything that they can. They're not going to go down. They're not going to move up the table. Have a bit of fun with it. Well, this is the end of the stream. We've got quite a few people saying happy birthday to you for tomorrow, Ben. Obviously, you've got your lovely card that I made for you. Happy Mitrovic return day. Yeah. We've got Marius saying Bruno brace. We shall see. We shall see. I'm backing Newcastle. I'm backing Isaac. He's my captain this week. You've said Wilson. But for now, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Lovely to see you all. The best of luck with your teams. See you next week. And yeah, just have a good game week 36.